Why do you keep thinking about someone who's no longer here? Why, even though you know it's over, does your heart still silently search for them? It's not weakness. It's not a lack of self-love. And it's not that you don't know how to let go. It's because there's an invisible bond, an energetic thread that's still open within you. Today, you're going to discover something almost no one knows, that on your own wrist, there's a portal capable of helping your heart close what was left unfinished, without violence, without forced forgetting, without tearing out memories. If you stay until the end, you'll learn a simple gesture, a quiet one, that can begin to bring your energy back home. But the true revelation will only come at the very end. And before we continue, leave the energetic key to this process in the comments. I'm ready to let go. And if you feel this message is already touching something deep in your soul, you can support this shared energy with a super chat as a conscious act of support for this spiritual space. Because when the heart recognizes the truth, the impulse to sustain the light that transmits it is also born more than 2,000 years ago in the quietest centers of knowledge in ancient China, in Taoist monasteries, where masters dedicated entire decades to the meticulous observation of the human body and the invisible nature that animates it. Slowly, a map of inner life was built, one that no Western science has been able to fully replicate with its instruments. That map wasn't drawn on paper. It was passed from master to disciple in the only language that can contain what lies beyond words: direct experience, trained perception, attention so refined it can feel what eyes will never see. What these masters discovered about the human heart wasn't just anatomy or physiology. It was something contemporary medicine will take a long time to accurately name, because its tools were designed to measure what has mass, temperature, and speed. And what these sages mapped exists in a dimension prior to any of those properties. They discovered that every deep encounter between two human beings isn't simply a social or emotional event. It's an energetic event. An event that leaves a trace in the invisible field surrounding and penetrating the physical body, which in the Chinese tradition is called the Qi field. And in other contemplative traditions around the world, it goes by different names, but describes the same fundamental reality, that a human being doesn't end where their skin ends. When two people meet in depth, when they allow each other real vulnerability, not just superficial, when they share moments of truth that go beyond everyday information exchange, when one heart recognizes something in the other's heart with that silent certainty that can't be explained but can't be denied, something happens that Taoist masters describe with astonishing precision even today. The energetic fields of both intertwine not as a poetic metaphor, but as a real phenomenon, that it has real effects on the body, on sleep, on concentration, on the everyday emotional state. What some traditions call an energetic cord, a channel of exchange that exists independently of the conscious will of the people involved, and that can remain active long after physical contact has ended. This knowledge was developed with special depth within traditional Chinese medicine and the meridian system, which is its backbone. Meridians are invisible channels through which qi flows, the vital energy that animates every living organism, and were mapped with such extreme extraordinary precision that contemporary acupuncturists still use exactly the same points identified by masters 20 centuries ago. What those masters understood is that the energetic heart, the emotional and spiritual center of the human being, is not simply a mechanical pump that moves blood. It's the organ of connection. It's where bonds are registered, where the deepest emotional impressions are stored, where every person who had real access to our inner life leaves a mark that doesn't disappear with physical separation. That mark is real. It has a frequency. It continues to emit a signal that the body can detect even when the conscious mind is busy with other things, and when the relationship that gave it origin ends, when the person leaves, or the connection breaks without a real energetic closure and not just a physical or social separation. That channel of exchange can remain open, vibrating, waiting for a response that will no longer come. Not because you're weak, not because you haven't tried to let go, but because no one taught you that letting go isn't just a mental decision, but also an energetic act that requires a specific process. The wise also observed something that is fundamental to understanding what you experience when you can't stop thinking about someone who is no longer there. The body doesn't distinguish between past and present with the same clarity as the conceptual mind. For the body, for the energetic field, if the channel remains open and keeps vibrating, the connection remains present, not a memory, a presence. And that presence constantly and silently consumes energy like an app running in the background on a device and drains the battery without the user noticing until suddenly they find themselves without strength, having done nothing seemingly demanding. The mystics of ancient China called this phenomenon loss of Ying, of vital essence, and considered it one of the most important factors in human exhaustion that couldn't be explained by obvious physical causes. When someone feels tired, even if they rest, empty, even if they eat well, restless, even if there are no external reasons for the restlessness, the masters first looked at unresolved ties, at the energetic channels that remained open to people or situations from the past, because they knew that recovering the energy from those channels was sometimes more healing than any physical body treatment. To understand why the process of letting go is so difficult and why the solutions the modern world offers rarely work with the depth we need, we must first understand something about the nature of the energetic heart and how the invisible archiving system that keeps past ties alive actually functions. In traditional Chinese medicine, there's a fundamental concept called Shen, which can be roughly translated as the heart's mind spirit, the emotional and spiritual intelligence residing in that organ. It governs not only emotions, but also our ability to connect with others, to trust, to open up, and to love. Shen has a characteristic that the masters observed with particular care. It doesn't forget, not in the way conceptual memory forgets, which can lose details or distort them over time. Shen records with almost absolute fidelity the energetic quality of each significant bond, the emotional frequency of every moment that left a real imprint. It actively preserves that record, not as a dead file, but as a living field that continues to resonate with what it registered. This explains something you probably experienced, and that no purely psychological explanation ever fully resolves. Why can certain people be absent from your life for years, yet still appear in your dreams with a clarity that defies? Why can a song or a scent instantly take you back to an emotional state you thought you had completely overcome? Why can the thought of someone arise at the most unexpected moment with an intensity that has no relation to what you were doing at all? It's not your mind refusing to cooperate. It's your Shen, the heart spirit, which continues to actively hold the record of that connection because no one has given it a clear signal that it can let go. In the contemporary world, the way most significant relationships end creates the perfect conditions for the energetic heart to get trapped in a cycle of permanent openness without any closure. Relationships end via text messages, through silences that extend until both parties understand something has ended without anyone clearly saying it. Through conversations that address the external facts of separation but never touch the energetic and emotional dimension of what's unraveling. Through physical goodbyes that occur amidst pain and confusion where neither person involved has the clarity needed to do what the heart truly requires, a conscious acknowledgement that the energetic exchange between them is being closed with intention, with gratitude for what was, with respect for what both gave and received, and with the clear will to recover one's own energy and return the others. Without that closure, the energetic system remains in a state of suspension that can last years, decades in some cases. And in that state of suspension, something important happens that needs to be clearly understood because it's the root of much of the emotional suffering we can't find a way to resolve. The autonomic nervous system, which regulates bodily processes that occur below the threshold of consciousness, learns to maintain a constant, low-intensity state of alert that is associated with that unclosed connection. Not the acute alert of immediate danger, but the dull, diffuse, exhausting alert of a system that keeps waiting for something it doesn't consciously know it's waiting for. It's the vigilance of a heart that hasn't received permission to rest. There's also another level of complexity that few spiritual teachings address with enough honesty. Sometimes what makes it impossible to let go isn't just the love that was there, but also the unprocessed pain that remained, the wound that was never recognized as such. The moment something inside you was hurt, and instead of being seen and held, it was pushed inward because circumstances didn't allow it to be fully felt. That unprocessed pain also creates an energetic anchor. It keeps a channel open because the body, with its wisdom that transcends the conscious mind, knows that something remained unfinished and refuses to close the file until what's unfinished is recognized, even if internally, even without the other person's presence, even if it's just between you and that part of you that still carries what it couldn't let go of when it happened. Understanding all of this isn't an intellectual exercise. It's the first step towards a healing that goes much deeper than any technique that only works with the level of thoughts. Because what's trapped isn't primarily in your thoughts, it's in your field, it's in your body, it's in the memory that the heart holds with a fidelity that no mental effort can erase, but which can indeed be transformed when you work at the level where that record lives. What you're about to discover has over 20 years of documented history and continues to be used today in the clinical practice of acupuncture and energetic medicine. It's not a technique invented for this moment, nor a contemporary adaptation of some vague concept about energy. It's specific, precise knowledge, mapped with an accuracy that surprises even modern students of integrative medicine when they first understand the internal coherence of the system that contains it. On the inside of your left wrist, 3 finger widths from the crease that marks where the hand joins the forearm, exactly in the space between the 2 central tendons, you can feel, if you slightly flex your hand, lies one of the most important acupuncture points in the entire system of Chinese meridian. Its name in Chinese is Neiguan, which is written with 2 characters and can be translated as the inner gate or the inner pass. In the meridian system, it corresponds to point 6 of the pericardium meridian, which in traditional Chinese medicine is the energetic system that surrounds and protects the heart. It's fundamental to understand what the pericardium is in this context, because it doesn't simply refer to the fibrous sac that physically surrounds the heart as an organ, even though that's its anatomical correlate. In traditional Chinese medicine, the pericardium, as an energetic system, has a function that masters described with a very precise image. It's the minister of the heart, the king's royal protector. Just as in ancient courts, a guardian decided who could approach the sovereign and who had to stay out, the pericardium's energy system governs who and what can access the emotional and spiritual heart of a human being. It filters external influences that could harm the heart's vulnerability. It manages the opening and closing of emotional connection channels. And when an energetic bond remains open after a relationship has ended, it's the pericardium that keeps that door, not by mistake, but because that's its job, to hold what the heart hasn't given permission to release. The Neiguan point, the inner gate of the pericardium, was identified by masters as one of the places in the body where it's possible to communicate directly with this guardian, where it's with the right intention and proper presence to give the heart's energy system a signal that cannot be given in any other way. The signal that the cycle has been recognized, that what was experienced was real and valuable and deserves to be honored, and precisely for that reason, it can be released with dignity and not with violence. This distinction is crucial and marks the difference between true healing and suppression that always returns disguised. It's not about cutting the bond as if it never existed. It's not about denying the importance of what happened or convincing yourself that person didn't mean what they did. It's about doing something much more respectful of the truth of what you experienced and the integrity of who you are. To recognize that the energetic exchange that existed fulfilled its purpose, that the energy you gave was given with love even when it hurt, that the energy you received was a gift, even if it came with its own shadows, and that now, from a place of awareness and not of escape, you can reclaim what is yours and allow what is not to follow its own path. Classical Chinese medicine texts describe Neiguan, a far-reaching point that not only acts on the pericardium, but also connects with the 3 spaces of the torso, what is traditionally called the triple warmer thus regulating the energetic flow throughout the body's entire inner dimension. Masters used it to treat what they called heart agitation, which included not only anxiety or insomnia, but also what we would recognize today as the emotional suffering of unresolved bonds, the inability to let go of the past, the heart that cannot rest because something in it is still waiting. Acupressure on this point. Stimulation with the finger instead of a needle activates the same mechanisms as acupuncture, though with less intensity and greater gentleness, making it perfectly appropriate for personal use in the context of a conscious, emotional healing process. Contemporary research in neuroscience has documented that stimulating acupuncture points produces measurable changes in the activity of the autonomic nervous system, reducing the sympathetic nervous system's response that maintains coordinateness and activating the parasympathetic response that allows the system to relax and reorganize. What Taoist masters observed for centuries through trained perception, modern science is beginning to confirm through its own instruments. They are not contradictory knowledge systems. They are different languages to describe the same reality from complementary perspectives. Before we begin, there's something important to establish about the nature of what you're about to do, because the context with which this gesture is approached largely determines what the body receives from it. This is not a relaxation exercise, nor a stress management technique in the conventional sense of those expressions. It's an act of conscious communication with your own energy system. It's a wordless conversation you have with the intelligence that governs your inner field, telling it you are here, that you are present, that you are willing to actively participate in your own reorganization of energy. With that intention set, find a place where you can be undisturbed for at least 5 minutes. It doesn't need to be an altar or a special space, a chair, the edge of your bed, the floor if you prefer. The only thing that matters is that in that moment you can be completely yourself. Place both feet on the floor if you're sitting, feeling real contact between the soles of your feet and the surface supporting you. There's something in that contact that anchors the nervous system and prepares the body to receive what is about to happen. Take 3 full breaths without changing anything yet, just observing how your body breathes naturally, how air enters and exits without you having to ask it to, with that perfect autonomy the body maintains even when the mind is completely lost in its stories. Now, bring your attention to the inner part of your left wrist. Turn your hand so the palm faces up. Observe the inner side of your forearm. You'll see or feel the horizontal crease that marks the beginning of the hand, where the wrist's flexion creates a line. From that crease, measure 3 finger widths up your forearm, using your own index, middle, and ring fingers placed horizontally across your wrist. Where your 3rd finger ends is the area where the Neiguan point is located. Now, with that same third finger, or with your thumb, if that's more comfortable, gently feel that area until you find a spot that feels different from the surrounding tissues. Sometimes it feels like a slight sensation of depth as if there's more space there than in the adjacent tissues. Sometimes there's a slight tenderness when pressed. Sometimes none of that is evident at first. And that's okay too, because exact precision comes with practice and isn't a requirement to receive the benefit of this process. Once you have your finger on that point, begin to apply gradual and firm pressure without causing pain, directing the pressure slightly upwards towards your elbow. The correct intensity is a pressure that you clearly feel but doesn't cause discomfort. Close your eyes. Bring all your attention to your chest space, to the central area of your sternum, to that territory the heart inhabits. Not to analyze it, just to be present there with the same gentleness with which you would rest your gaze on something you want to see while maintaining pressure on the Neiguan. Begin to breathe a little more consciously. Inhale slowly through your nose, allowing your abdomen to expand first, then your chest in a smooth, full movement that fills your lungs without forcing them. As you inhale, imagine that breath carrying a soft light towards the center of your chest, to the space where your heart holds what it hasn't been able to release. That image doesn't need to be vivid or detailed. A vague sensation of light moving is enough. Exhale slowly through your mouth or nose, whatever feels most natural. And as you do, imagine that with the air leaving, something you've been carrying also departs. You don't have to know exactly what it is. Your body knows. Your energetic system knows. Just allow it to leave. With each breath cycle on the point, something very subtly changes in the quality of what you feel in your chest. It might be a slight sensation of warmth expanding from where your finger is into your forearm and towards your chest. It could be a gentle tingling. It might be that your shoulder muscles, which usually hold tension we no longer notice because we've had it for so long, begin to release a little. It might be that the image of the person or situation you've been carrying appears in your mind with unexpected clarity. If that happens, don't push it away or fight against it. Just observe it with the same presence you observe everything else right now, because this is the most important aspect of the entire process. It's not about suppressing or denying. It's about allowing what has been held in the field to finally be seen and acknowledged, because only what is consciously seen can truly be released. Remain in this presence on the point for at least 3 full minutes. If you can hold it for 5 or 7, even better. With time and practice, you'll be able to extend it to 15 or 20 minutes. But even 3 minutes of genuine presence produce noticeable effects in the energetic field. While maintaining the pressure and your breath, you can repeat internally without moving your lips, with the deepest, calmest voice you can imagine within yourself, an affirmation that isn't just a nice phrase, but a direct instruction for your energetic system. That instruction is this: my energy. I honor what was, my heart. Every part of this phrase has a precise purpose. Energy is the declaration of intention that guides the field. I honor what was is the acknowledgement that prevents suppression and allows the system to release without violence. And I allow my heart to rest is the permission, which is perhaps the most important element of all. because the guardian of the heart, the pericardium, will not release what it holds until it receives that explicit permission from your consciousness. When you feel something in your chest has shifted, even minimally, even if it's a barely perceptible sensation of slight relief, or more space, or a breath that goes a little deeper than before, acknowledge it. Don't magnify it or analyze it. Just acknowledge it with silent gratitude towards your own body, which is cooperating with this process, with a willingness that should amaze you. Then, very gradually, without rushing, reduce the pressure on the point until your finger simply rests on the skin without applying any pressure. Stay like this for a moment. Then completely remove your finger. Place both hands on your thighs, palms facing up, in a gesture of openness and reception. Take 3 final breaths, each one a little softer than the last. And on the last exhale, release everything, including the intention, including the effort, including the expectation of a particular outcome. What the field has received is already doing its work. It doesn't need your supervision to complete it. When the energy begins to return to you in a sustained way, when the process you've just initiated begins to have continuity through regular practice, something in the architecture of your daily experience begins to change in ways that are difficult to anticipate from where you are now, but that you will recognize with absolute clarity when they occur. The first change most people notice isn't dramatic or spectacular. It's actually the opposite. It's the absence of something that was always present. The absence of that diffuse background pressure you couldn't name, but that was always there, occupying a space in your attention that was never fully available for what was in front of you. As if music you'd been listening to for years without choosing it suddenly stopped, and in the remaining silence, you'd discover you didn't remember what real silence was. Thoughts about the person or situation don't disappear overnight, and it would be a mistake to expect them to, because the goal of this process isn't forgetting, but liberation. The difference between remembering freely and remembering as a burden is that in the first case, the thought appears, is recognized for what it is, a record of something that happened and was part of your history, and then it leaves naturally without you having to push it away. In the second case, the thought appears and stays, generating another thought and then another, activating an emotional response in the body that feels identical to what you felt when the situation was present, not past. This is because the nervous system in the body, as we mentioned before, doesn't distinguish as clearly as the conceptual mind between the memory of something and the presence of that something. The return of energy also manifests in dreams in ways many people find significant. Dreams where the person or situation appeared with an intense emotional charge, where you'd wake up feeling like you'd experienced something real and disturbing, begin to change in character. Sometimes the person still appears in dreams, but their presence has a different, like the presence of a character from a story that has already ended and no longer has the power to activate the alert system it once did. This is the Shen reorganizing, the heart spirit processing at night. What the daytime practice is releasing, finishing, integrating what had remained suspended. In that open file we talked about earlier, there's a change even more subtle that deserves special attention because it has the most profound implications for the quality of your future life. As you recover the energy that was invested in the past, your capacity for presence in the present increases in a way that sometimes seems disproportionate to the practice that produced it. This isn't magic or exaggeration. It's the direct and predictable consequence of more of you being available here and now. When a significant part of your attention and energy is constantly oriented towards something that no longer exists in the present, the amount of yourself that can genuinely be with what does exist, with the people in front of you, with the projects that require your best energy, with the opportunities that appear, but you can't clearly see because your perceptive field is partially occupied by something else. That amount is less than it should be, and when that energy returns, when that field is freed, the experience of being present changes qualitatively. Conversations become richer because you're truly. Decisions become clearer because they're not being interfered with by the background noise of the unclosed bond. The sense of yourself changes in a way that can be hard to describe, but is immediately recognized. There's more of you, more available, more real, more yours. Something else also happens that masters of the Chinese tradition called the purification of Shen, the clarification of the heart spirit. They are a greater ability to discern which relationships and situations deserve your energy and which ones consume it without returning anything of real value. When the field is charged with the residues of unclosed bonds, that capacity for discernment is compromised. Familiarity is confused with compatibility, known pain with true love, intensity emotional with real depth. When the field is cleared, those distinctions become clearer, and the way you relate to the world begins to change from a place that's more genuine and more aligned with who you truly are. What distinguishes a transformative from an exercise that provides momentary relief is exactly what the title of this chapter suggests: daily integration. The Neiguan point, activated once with good intention, produces a real but temporary effect, like a seed planted in unprepared soil that may germinate, but without proper watering and care, it won't become what it could be. Daily practice, on the other hand, creates something that in neuroscience is called a new pattern of connectivity, and which in the Chinese energetic tradition would be described as the establishment of a new qi habit, a new preferential path through which vital energy learns to circulate differently than it did before. The energetic ties that time and deep encounters wove into your field weren't formed in an instant, were built layer upon layer through repetition, through shared moments that added up one by one, through emotions that were activated again and again in the context of that connection, until the energetic system learned that pattern in the same way it learns any other deep habit. To unravel that weaving, to release those patterns, requires the same principle that created them: conscious repetition in the opposite direction. Not the compulsive repetition of thoughts that go in circles without reaching anywhere new, but the intentional repetition of an act that tells the field each practice every time you place your finger on the point and breathe with presence. This is the new path. Energy flows here now. The most effective practice follows a rhythm that respects the nature of the body and the energy field. Morning, In the first few minutes after waking up, before your phone, the news, and the day's obligations completely colonize your attention, is a moment of particular openness and receptivity where practicing on the Neiwan sets the energetic tone for the hours to come. Just 1 minute of presence on the point, with the clear intention of starting the day centered on yourself, with your energy oriented towards the present and not the past, has an effect that extends far beyond that minute, because it establishes an initial state from which the day's events are processed differently. Night, in the minutes before sleep, is the second ideal moment because it's when the nervous system is transitioning into a state of rest where the body performs much of its integration and repair work. Practicing on the Neiwan at that moment gives the energy system a clear signal of closure, that it can release the day's tension, that it doesn't need to keep processing past worries when it should be resting. This has a direct and measurable effect on sleep quality that many people notice within the first few weeks of regular practice. But there's a third moment for practice that is possibly the most powerful of all and requires a particular level of self-awareness to take advantage of it. The moment when a thought about a person or situation spontaneously appears during the day. That moment, which in a usual situation triggers the automatic cycle of emotions and outward flowing energy, can, with practice, become exactly the opposite, a signal that automatically activates the gesture of returning to the Neiwan point, not to suppress the thought, but to hold it differently, from a place of presence and conscious intention, instead of automatic reactivity. Over time, and the definition of that time varies from person to person, depending on the depth of the connection and the regularity of the practice. Something begins to happen that cannot be forced, but is the natural result of the process when given the time and attention it needs. The gesture of bringing your finger to the point becomes unnecessary because the state that gesture produced starts to become the baseline state from which you operate, like when you learn to swim, and there comes a time when you no longer have to think about the movements because the body has integrated them and simply swims. The work of returning to your own center ceases to be a conscious effort and becomes the natural way you are in the world. That is the real goal of all genuine spiritual practice. Not to produce special states at special moments, but to transform the ordinary quality of everyday experience from within. There's a moment in the healing process that masters from all contemplative traditions consistently mention, but which few people in the midst of pain can truly imagine as something that will happen to them. The moment when the story you lived stops being the wound that defines what you can expect from life and becomes the teacher who taught you something you couldn't have learned with the same depth either way. That moment doesn't arrive as a result of an intellectual decision to change your perspective, though the intention to change it has its value. It arrives as a consequence of a real integration process that occurs in the energetic field when given the time and the right conditions, and that produces what in Chinese tradition would be called a transformation of yin into shen, the conversion of the dense, heavy energy of unprocessed experience into the more refined light of integrated wisdom. Inner rebirth is neither a metaphor nor an empty promise of well-being. It's the precise description of something that occurs in the deep psychology of the human being when the process of letting go is genuinely and not superficially completed. What psychologist Carl Jung called individuation. the process by which a human being becomes more fully what they essentially are through the integration of all their experiences, including the most painful ones, remarkably coincides with what Eastern spiritual traditions describe as the maturation of Shen, the heart spirit, which becomes more luminous and wiser precisely because it has endured darkness without fleeing. Clearer signs that this process of inner rebirth is truly happening is a change in how one relates to their own vulnerability. Before healing, vulnerability feels like a weakness that must be hidden, like an access point through which pain can enter and cause harm. After integration, vulnerability reveals itself as exactly the opposite, as the condition for the possibility of real love, as the door through which genuine connection can occur. This change isn't a philosophical stance adopted after reading something enlightening. It's a transformation in the very texture of emotional experience, which can only occur when the heart has sufficiently processed what caused it pain and has reached an understanding that goes beyond conventional forgiveness. Conventional forgiveness, as commonly taught, is an act of will that says what happened no longer matters, or that the person who caused harm deserves to be freed from the consequences of their actions. That might have its value in certain contexts, but it's not what creates true inner freedom. What creates true inner freedom is something different and deeper. It's the recognition, which can only come after the integration process has occurred, that every bond you experienced, including the one that hurt the most when it ended, gave you something that was uniquely yours, something that could only reach you through that specific experience, with that specific person, at that specific moment in your history. Not because the pain was necessary in itself, nor because you should romanticize it, but because the reality is that you are who you are today, partly thanks to and partly despite everything you've lived through. And that includes relationships that ended in ways that still hurt when you revisit them. There's something else that happens in inner rebirth and that has direct implications for the future of your relationships. It changes the quality of love with which you enter new relationships. When you carry with you the energetic residues of unresolved relationships, when there are still open channels to the past, the way you relate to new people is inevitably influenced by those residual connections, sometimes in ways you can't even see. You unconsciously seek the familiar, even if the familiar is what hurt you. You stop, even if you don't want to compare. You expect, even if you don't know exactly what you're expecting. But when the field has been cleared, when the energy has returned home, the heart has completed its integration process. The way you enter a new relationship changes from its root, no longer from the lack of what was missing in the past, but from the fullness of what exists in the present, no longer looking in the other for what only you can give yourself, but genuinely willing to find the other for who they truly are, a complete being with their own story, their own field, and their own light, who doesn't come to complete you because you're already complete, but to expand what already exists. That's the kind of love that can only happen when someone has walked the path you're walking now. And it's not a calmer or a lukewarm love. It's a freer, more honest love, more capable of holding both joy and difficulty without losing itself in either. Today, you didn't just learn a point on your wrist. Today, you discovered a door to your own center, a gentle, conscious, profound way to reclaim your energy without struggle, without rejection, without forgetting what was. Because letting go isn't abandoning, letting go is returning home. This space exists for awakening souls, for those who feel more than they say, for hearts that know healing isn't a destination, but a journey. If this message resonated with you, subscribe and walk with this community of conscious souls who are remembering who they are and to seal what you've learned. Keep this phrase within you. My heart returns to its center. Repeat it silently when you need it, when the memory appears, when the emptiness returns, when you need to remember your power. And if you wish to support this spiritual space, if you feel gratitude for this teaching, you can do so through a super chat as a conscious way to keep this shared light alive. We'll meet again next awakening.